and I always get a lot out of his shares. So I thought it'd be nice to have him speak today. So I would like to introduce Tris. You have about 20 to 30 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bridget. My name is Tris, and I'm an alcoholic. I hope that people can hear me. I'm trying without my earphones, so if you find you can't hear, if people could just sort of do this or something so that I know, that would be helpful. So yeah, I'm Tris, I'm an alcoholic. It's lovely to be in the meeting. It's good to be in any AA meeting, and I enjoy these secular meetings a lot. I like, there's a lot about them that I like, and I like the fact that they're in America because I like you Americans. I like the accents. I like the way you talk, the way I love it. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to share. I sort of put together a bit of a crib sheet, but I don't think it's going to help very much. Me and my alcoholism, there was no obvious reason for it in my case. I've heard people tell terrible stories of terrible childhoods, and you sort of think, well, I would drink too. I had none of that. I had an idyllic childhood, really, with parents who loved me and lived in a nice place, a good city in Oxford, in England, lovely place. There was nothing really very bad that I remember about my youth, except one background thing, which was a warning looking back, which was that I was always anxious. I was always a bit nervous. I felt a bit less than, as we like to say now. There was no reason for that. I was given no reason for doing it, and it was just a part of me. And I had a couple of accidents with alcohol in my early teens, which should have been a warning or might have been a warning, but it just looked like any other teenager making a fool of themselves with booze. So there was no warning. And I started to drink properly at about 17, 18 or so. And I realized that this stuff used right, as I saw it, would do everything for me. It made me a bit taller, a bit funnier, a bit better looking. I could drive a little bit faster. I could do it, I could pull girls, I could do the lot. And I remember quite early in my late teens, probably 19, I remember having a very clear thought moment, which was that I thought to myself, whatever else I'm going to do in this life, I'm going to need to make a lot of money, because I'm going to want a wife and a house and a car and a family and all that sort of stuff. And I've got to be able to buy drink every day. And that was, at that moment, I've always felt, looking back at it, I gave my life and my will over to alcohol, good and proper. And the only problem was I didn't really have any money, and I quickly went downhill. About a year after that, I thought, well, just to make sure I've not got a problem with this stuff, I think I'd better have a day off alcohol, just make sure I'm actually okay. I'm not an alcoholic or anything like that. And I started my day off alcohol, and I did not finish it off alcohol. And I think I was 20. So I gave up on that idea. That hurt too much. I wasn't going to do that again. So a year later, I was living in a sort of converted derelict barn with a woman I hardly knew, shooting rats through the bedroom ceiling, stealing livestock from a neighbouring farm to eat, and doing things I shouldn't have been doing for money to buy alcohol. I always had a job in a pub, in an inn, because that was where the booze was. But it wasn't enough. So I was doing stuff that I shouldn't have been up to, and it hurt. Everything hurt. Really, for me, it should have been a mercifully quick takedown. And the story should have ended probably a year later with me dead in a ditch, or in a rehab or sectioned or something. But it didn't, because I got some money, and I don't care. For me, I think money can give you better outcomes, even in the chaos of alcoholic drinking. And it certainly did for me. I was able to become a married family alcoholic in a nice German car and a suit and a nice big house. This happened because somebody basically gave me the opportunity to start and run a business for them, and said they would pay me frighteningly well if I did it well, and sort of beat me up or throw me out if I didn't. And I respond to challenges like that. I modeled myself on this man. I became like him, and I in turn bullied everyone. I found that I could frighten people. I was 22. I found that I could frighten people. I didn't have to get into fist fights, which I wasn't very good at anyway. I found that I could terrify people by talking to them or by being around them, as long as I had alcohol inside me. So quickly I became a 24-hour-a-day drinker. When I wasn't asleep, I was drunk. First thing I did in the morning was to tank up. And my day, I mean, I had another 12 years of this to go. And very quickly, my day went that I would drop my wife off as quickly as I could at her workplace and drink half a bottle of vodka in my car on the way up to my workplace. I would arrive in fine spirits with that half bottle inside me, and I would set the office up, kick the crap out of everyone, tell them what I expected them to do, and go off on a string of sort of mythical appointments with an embryonic early car phone or not. And I would run the business remotely, basically. And I did pretty well at it. 6 o'clock in the evening, I'd come back in, pat everyone on the back, tell them they were great, send them home, and at 7 o'clock, I'd go home. And my job, as soon as I got home, I'd been drinking all day, so I'd had another bottle through the day, half a bottle to a bottle through the day. Beer and wine were of no interest to me whatsoever. This was just vodka. And my job when I got home was to get my wife to bed as quickly as I could so that I could drink my nightcap, which was straight from the bottle of vodka in the car. So I would just start on at her about what a tough gig it all was and how tired she looks. Why didn't she go and have a bath, you know? Anyway, I'd get rid of her pretty fast most nights. She'd be in bed by 9 o'clock, and I could go and sit in the garage with my bottle of vodka, one cigarette, 10 minutes, half to one bottle of vodka, leaving just enough in the bottom of the bottle to get me started the following morning, so that I wouldn't have to keep the promise that I made to myself every night, which is, tomorrow will be different. I will not do this again tomorrow. Because, of course, in the morning, the half was still in the bottle and I was going to drink that one, wasn't I? So once I'd drunk it, the choice had gone and I was off again. And I did that for 10 years. And you do a lot of damage drinking like that. And I did a lot of damage to myself, to others. I didn't kill anyone. I was very lucky. Other people too were very lucky. But the business went fine and I made money. I mean, I had a big house in the best suburb of Oxford. I had the big bank manager's house when I was 28. It was gone by the time I was 31. The whole thing had fallen in tatters. But, you know, for 4 years, I lived that life. And then I couldn't live any sort of life. Nothing worked. I could get drunk, I could go through the motions, but we all know what it's like, don't we? In my case, the loneliness was such that I used to go, I was always out of the office anyway, but I would eat my lunch in my car on a hill with a view where everybody else ate their lunch in their cars. And I would slide into the line of cars And I would always stop about sort of 6 foot back from the other cars. And the reason I did that was firstly so that they wouldn't see my big red and white bottle of vodka. I didn't want them seeing that. But secondly, so that I could keep an eye on all the other drivers on either side of me, because I hoped more than I wanted anything in my life, I wanted to see another of them with a big red and white bottle of vodka in his car. Because I knew that if I could just do that, if I could just have one tiny human connection with another person like me, it would be wonderful. I had it all worked out. I was going to go over, bang on the window. He'd be terrified. I'd say, no, it's okay. Don't worry. Me too. Shall we just meet up here every day and drink our bottles of vodka in the car and have a chat and just be us? Wouldn't that be great? And I never found him in all those years. I only found that man in his car with his bottle of vodka when I first came to my first AA meeting. And there you were, 50 of you, all sitting there, all telling the stories, all telling me my own story. And yeah, it was an inspiring moment, that first meeting. It was wonderful. Of course, I knew that a lot of people there were lying, because I was hearing people saying that they'd been sober for 6 months or a year or 10 years. And I thought, well, that's bullshit. You're obviously not any sort of alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. I know what an alcoholic is, and you are not one. And you cannot possibly know. You can have no idea of how this is for me now here. So I ignored a lot of those people, and I didn't want to hear them or listen to their tales of lengthy sobriety. But there was a guy at that meeting, and he shared that he'd been sober for 1 week. And that lit my lights. I grabbed that man after that meeting. I wouldn't let him go. And I said, you've got to tell me how you did it. I said, I can't stay sober past midday. I can't stay sober past 9 in the morning. You have got to tell me how you stayed sober for a week, because if you can do that, then maybe I can do it. And he did. And he said, well, in that first day, he said, I just broke it up into hours because there was no way I could do it. But I found that an hour at a time, I could do it. And sometimes it had to be a few minutes, but I got there. He said, I got to the end of the day. And the thing about getting to the end of the day, that first day, is that if you can get your head on the pillow and wake up the following morning and you haven't had a drink, then you do have a choice. He said, you got 2 things. Firstly, you have a day of sobriety. No one can take that away from you. It's like a brick. You can sit and you can hold your day of sobriety. And he said, secondly, you've got a choice, which is the first time you will have had a choice for years. You can decide whether you're going to drink or not because you haven't got a drink inside you, so you can make your mind up. You can either drink again, in which case you still got that sober day, but you're going to have to go through it again, or you can get another sober day and you can have 2 little bricks and you can start to build yourself a wall. And I've got 7 bricks in my wall now, he said. I'm not going to stop. And it worked for me. It took months. I kept coming to meetings and lying, telling people I'd been sober. I was sober. I could always tell you my name was Tris, I'm an alcoholic, and I haven't had a drink today. And that was because I'd learned to white knuckle it through the morning and the afternoon, get to my meeting. And I could say that honestly, that I hadn't had a drink that day. And I had 2 bottles of vodka in the car, one to drink on the way home, and the second one in case the first one wasn't enough, and to make sure I had a supply in the morning. So 3 more months of that, and then I was ready to do what this guy had done. And I tried my first day. The only difference was I drove down to the bottle bank. I threw the bottles in. I didn't go to the off license next door and buy more. I drove on and went to work. And I did it. And that was my first sober day. And since then, I haven't found it necessary or even desirable to drink alcohol. I've had my moments, but really, they've all been, the alcohol has given up the fight before it's got anywhere near me. I will just try and mention how that happened later. So basically, I mean, that was it. I did have to, I'll do it now. I did have to learn that for me, I did wonder, how am I going to get through birthdays, Christmas, parties, all the stuff. And, none of it really bothered me because it very quickly, it was obvious. It was just another day. It might be a slightly tougher day, but now I'd got a few little bricks in my wall, I could do it. So that was all right. And then, of course, there were the things that would give me an excuse to drink, if somebody died, if a parent died, if someone was killed, all these things. But I've been in recovery for a long time now, and they've all happened. I've lost both my parents separately. My father quite recently. I've ended, and I have ended 2 marriages. I haven't had them ended against me, as it were. I have ended 2 marriages in recovery. One of those was my first marriage, and my first wife remains a good friend. We were out for lunch with her yesterday. Had a nice time. That's a benefit of the recovery that we can have in these rooms. The second marriage was to a recovering alcoholic in this fellowship, and we had a high old time. In the end, she drank, and I did stick with it, partly out of my own fear and selfishness, but partly because I actually wanted to make it work. But it didn't stop, and I found then, and I know now, that I can't live with a drinking one. I cannot drink. I cannot live with a practicing alcoholic. For me, it won't work. Even if I could manage it without drinking, I couldn't spiritually do it, and I wouldn't do it to myself. Other things have happened. My daughter developed cancer at 24 and had a year of all the usual misery that one has with cancer, and ending up with the fact that she won't have children of her own ever. But she lived. She's in recovery now. And I think she'd swap places with me very happily if she could. My recovery just means that for her recovery, she has to go and be tested every year, and it's horrible. And she then has to wait for weeks, and in the end, they hopefully tell her that she's going to live for another year or 2. And the cancer isn't back, but she still can't have a child. My recovery? Well, all I've got to do is not pick up alcohol and come and spend a bit of time with you people, a couple of times a week. It's not really a hardship, is it? So yeah, I think my daughter would probably swap places with me in a heartbeat if she could swap recoveries with me. So these things have happened, and they haven't taken me anywhere near a drink. That's my point there. But what did once just get me going was when I'd been for a job interview for my second business career. And it really mattered that I got this job. It was when the second wife was drinking, and I knew we weren't going to last. And I needed money, I needed a house, I needed a lot of things. And I'd been for the interview. It was at 9 a.m, and I was out by about 10:30. And I knew I'd got the job. And the feeling was indescribable because of the importance of it to me. I went to my favorite situation, which was a supermarket cafe with a massive breakfast in front of me. I was a bed and breakfast chef for some years, and breakfast is my favorite meal, any time of any day, all the time. And I was sitting there with this colossus of a breakfast in front of me, thinking, I've got the job, I've got the breakfast. Oh, isn't it fantastic? And I suddenly thought that the sick side of my brain suddenly said to you, a bottle of vodka would go down well with that. And it just came at me like a sledgehammer just out of the blue. And I was in a supermarket with a pocket full of money, and the stuff was just on the shelf over there. And for a minute, I thought, yeah, I could, or at least I could do it in the bogs after I've had my breakfast. So for me, it's fairly well proven, I think, that the nasties of life, the lions and the tigers are unlikely to make me want to drink again. But you put me in a situation where I'm high as a kite, and that could just do it. So I learned from that. I've also lost 6 sponsors over the years. They've all been wonderful. The last one, I think, was probably my favourite. I didn't like him very much, but I loved him a lot. We'd known each other for 20 years when he became my sponsor, and when I asked him, he said, "No, Tris, I'm not going to do it." He said, "You must know that we all know that your last 5 have all died." And anyway, he changed his mind. He said the reason he wouldn't do it was because he knew me too well and we'd probably kill each other. He changed his mind and he rang me up and he said, "Okay, we'll do it, but we do it my way. And that is that you come to my house once a month at 7 o'clock on a day of my choosing, and we will have 2 hours in my stinking study, and we will not be going out for coffee, drinks, a meal or whatever. We're going to do hardcore." And he said, "When you get there, if you're 2 minutes late, don't bother knocking at the door, go home and don't bother." And he said, before you get there, a week before you get there, you are to have 1,500 words sent to me on a subject that I've chosen the previous time. And these are going to be difficult subjects for you. What he didn't know is that I wanted that. I knew that I was ready. I'd been in recovery for 25 years, and I knew that I was ready for another turn around that wheel. And bless him, I wrote 70,000 words for that man, half a novel on all manner of esoteric topics. And I learned a lot. And I think he learned a bit. He learned that it wasn't too dangerous. We could actually be friends. We could go out with our wives for a meal every now and again. But the 2-hour sessions in his study never, ever stopped until COVID took him from me and from this world 2 years ago. That was my 6th sponsor. I think sponsorship is amazing and I've enjoyed it thoroughly. So I will stay in recovery. That is what I want to do. I love it more than anything. Life's vicissitudes will undoubtedly continue to plague me from time to time. Hopefully none of them will take me back to a drink. I love these meetings because I am not a religious person. I tried that when I was a boy, it didn't work. I tried it in desperation when I was a drunk and it didn't work. And in recovery, I'd have done anything you told me to do, so I pretended. And then I got angry and I tried atheism instead. And that made me even angrier because it felt like the same argument the other way around. So it didn't work for me. So I settled on happy agnosticism. I like Cool Hand Luke in the film, I think nothing or don't know can be a very cool hand to play. Don't know suits me very well. So I'm a happy agnostic and I love these meetings for what they are and for the freedom that they give to everybody who attends them. More, I love them and I love you for the recovery that you have all given to me. I still do not know what I did to deserve it and to deserve you and to deserve what I've had now for 31 years. I was 33 when I last had a drink. I'm 64 now. I hope I never do it again, but thank you so much for helping me this far.